The story of my first yoga teachers, Roger and Albina Rippy of Yoga One Studios in Houston, Texas. I first met Albina at a free Lululemon event, in-store yoga event, in 2011 when I returned to Houston from Tokyo. I had set my mat down and she was right in front of me and she moved with cat-like grace. It was amazing, and I complimented her afterwards, saying that she moved beautifully. A few moments later, I was able to meet her husband, Roger, who was a charismatic person himself. I spoke with him about how I was into meditation, and I hadn't really done yoga. This is my second, maybe third yoga experience. And I was looking for an opportunity to teach meditation. And they had a little yoga studio in Midtown Houston and invited me to teach there. And that was very gracious of them. And so I got a spot on their schedule teaching a little yoga class, a little meditation class. It was pretty small in those days. I think there was just one studio, and then they started renovating it and opened up a second studio in the same building. And it was that point that the place started to take off. They would offer hot yoga in the studio to the left, and they would offer Baptiste power flow stuff in the studio to the right. And having just moved back to Houston after an absence of maybe 5 years, it was such an important source of community and friendship for me. There was a beautiful yoga community that was established there. And Roger and Albina became friends as well as teachers. But, and you knew the but was coming, but things started to change as they became more successful. I attended one of their first yoga teacher trainings in 2012, where I got my certification. I think we had a cohort of like 14 people. So here's the thing about yoga teacher trainings. They're very profitable because you're getting about 2 to 3 to 5 to 10 grand per person in the yoga teacher training. And it's hard to operate a studio just on $20 a head classes or $100, $200 a month membership fees. It's the workshops and it's the yoga teacher trainings where a lot of the profit margin comes from. So they started offering more workshops and more yoga teacher trainings and started including more and more people in them until you had 20, 30, even like 50 people in a yoga teacher training. Yeah. So Roger and Albina themselves changed. Let me describe Albina first. Albina was from a former Soviet republic in Central Asia. I don't remember exactly which one. She had immigrated to the United States, studied accounting, and was working as an accountant at a major airline. She started practicing and teaching yoga part-time, and she really loved it, and so she wanted to open up a studio. So she opened up that small studio called Yoga One Studios in Midtown, teaching primarily Bikram yoga, from what I recall. And, she had experienced poverty in Central Asia in her childhood, and she described that at times. And so I believe that there was a deep impulse, drive in her to seek financial stability and success. And it came. Yoga One Studios blew up, and they started earning a lot more money. And yoga, that success changed her. She got a boob job, and I remember this one specific scene of her strutting around in the studio with her new boobs and wearing this black bodysuit and wearing Louboutin stiletto heels. It was a very strange vibe for a yoga studio, but she became a diva and she became more ambitious. She started attending Tony Robbins seminars and found, I would say, new ways to earn money from the studio and to expand their offering. They opened up a second studio in Tanglewood, and then they solicited investments from members of their community to open up more studios in the Heights and in Bel Air and maybe a couple other places. Those investments did not go well for some. Eventually, the Rippys made the decision to sell their little yoga empire to YogaWorks, this kind of venture capital aspiring yoga chain, a national yoga chain. So despite their having established a really beautiful yoga community in Houston and their proclamations about how much they valued and loved everybody, they sold out and moved to Taos, New Mexico, where they opened up a yoga retreat center, which was quite disappointing. So what I learned from Albina was to be savvy in your yoga business, to make sure that the money flows and that the business is stable, because that can provide a stable basis for a community to grow. And I loved that community. I also learned to not let the money go to your head and to let yourself be transformed into a greedy, manipulative person. All right, Roger. Roger was working as an attorney, and he would occasionally help out with Albina at the studio, but as the studio expanded, he became a full-time teacher and manager himself. He was a very charismatic guy and very friendly, and a very good yoga teacher. But he changed as well. He would offer these Journey into Power workshops, which kind of elements of which he incorporated into the yoga teacher training. And so he would open it with this sharing session. And he would share that he had been sexually abused in his youth. And this would establish sympathy, this would establish honesty, this would establish earnestness, and then he would solicit other people in that setting to share something major that they were dealing with. And this would give him an insight into what the emotional state of those people were and how he could influence them. I think he really became addicted to helping people achieve breakthroughs. If you see that with like Tony Robbins, he kind of does that too. He kind of like brings people on stage and makes them talk about their trauma and then like forces them to have a breakthrough in front of a crowd of hundreds. So I think Roger was getting high off of that kind of power to do that. And he would also receive praise and adoration from the community that seemed to fill a hole in his heart. And things got very weird. He, for example, printed, and like literally strange, he printed a t-shirt that said #LoveBomb. What is love bomb? It is a technique employed in cults in which you take an emotionally vulnerable person and you bombard them with praise and sympathy and empathy and attention until they become dependent on the cult and the cultist. He also became a certified officiant of marriage ceremonies and married a friend of mine. So he became this kind of Joel Osteen preacher of yoga and kind of turned Yoga One into his yoga church. It was very strange. So what I learned from Roger was to be an honest, empathic, and charismatic yoga teacher, but I also learned not to manipulate people, to feed my own need for aggrandizement or ego. And so, yeah, that was my experience for the most part. with Roger and Albina Rippy of Yoga One Studios. May they be successful in Taos, New Mexico. Next, I will talk about one of the great yoga gurus of Houston, Texas, and how a sex cult began operating out of his studio.